program for Amata Aidu, for Ngugi, for God, and for some others, which is to celebrate our iconic figures. On your behalf, I send condolence to the family. It's a great loss, and we're here to honor him. As that short video has shown, you could see how big his intervention has been in terms of scholarship. Some people will appreciate him for his radicalism. He was a columnist, writing weekly column that he called Talakawa. And one day I wrote to him, I said, let's put all these essays together, which was published by Carolina Academic Press, and then Bookcraft released the Nigerian edition. And his son did the cover for that book, because he has a son who is an artist, an archaeologist. He's very proud of that book, extremely proud. I've read him. 3 of his essays I published when I was the editor of Odo. And you could see how he was able to connect Yoruba cultural imagination to the bigger project of global theoretical formulations. And in later life, his book on Soyinka dominated his intellectual framing. I don't know what our major intellectual figures who are presenting today will say, but like Soyinka, he was fascinated by myths and rituals. He wrote about that. In the vibrant debates at Ife in the 70s, there were clusters of Marxists, clusters like Wale Soyinka, who wasn't a Marxist, and there were debates. Is literature part of social praxis? He answered that question vigorously. And if you read Wale Soyinka's inaugural lecture, he gestured to that debate. It's immature. If you have not read Soyinka's inaugural lecture, I appeal to you to read it, because he was able to accumulate the debates of the 1980s. Jeyifo got involved in the crisis of the African state. He was the one who coined the phrase arrested development, if you all remember. He's a post-colonial theorist. In my tribute, I said he has to be rated as among the world's best post-colonial theorists. Drama, he even attempted to write his own plays. I don't know how that ended, whether those manuscripts do exist. And as he self-described, he described himself as a Marxist, talking about the roles of writers. And his academic careers spanned 3 continents. He worked in Africa, he worked in the United States, and he went to China to develop a program for them. I'm extremely grateful. I cannot thank our members of our panelists enough. And to those of you who have joined this program before, we only use Zoom to stream to other platforms. If you want to ask questions, you have to join by Zoom. So many people are concentrated Facebook, Instagram, and I'm very happy to announce that people have joined from 26 countries, including Ukraine. And some institutes have also joined in China. We'll release the details on Wednesday when we have the full picture. To those who have joined by Zoom, you will see the cast of distinguished people, some of his colleagues, Babafemi Ojudu, Tunji Olaokwa, the representatives of unions, former president of ASU, I saw him, and Babaye, the representative of the left. Publishers, Kasam Chekol of Africa World Press, and big-time professors. I will not introduce all the speakers at once. I will introduce each as we go along. We will cut each segment of your contribution. We'll post them separately. So we post 2 minutes after this is over, we post the entire proceeding. And then each segment of your contributions, we are going to post differently so that we can have multiple viewership. Let me start by calling Ogaga. Can I give each of you 15 minutes maximum? Or you think it's too long? Dr. Ogaga, please unmute him.
Hi, can you hear me? I think we should. I will leave it to you. You are the master of this forum. If you think 15 minutes will be enough, but I'm thinking there are 4 of us.
As long as you don't repeat one another, we're fine. And you don't have to finish spending all the 15 minutes. But I don't want it to be longer, because when we cut it, people are impatient in watching long conversations. So I'm just trying to balance the audience that will watch this later on. Let me, if we've agreed, let me introduce Professor Ogaga. We used to work in the state system 30 minutes away from me. He was a professor of English literature, and then he went to Nigeria, where he lives now. He's a lawyer, a poet, scholar, human rights activist. He took his law degree from the University of Benin, and he entered the bar in 1991. He worked for 10 years in human rights, non-governmental human rights group, the Civil Liberties Organization. In 2001, he went to the US to continue with his interest in writing and literature. He obtained a Master of Fine Art, which is a terminal degree, if you don't know, MA and PhD from Cornell University. He's done works on history, trauma, healing, post-colonial narratives and identity, and he published a book by that name in 2013. He taught Texas State University, where we interacted before he returned to Nigeria. 3 prize-winning books of poetry after him, and I think he's completed yet another one. He received a PEN Award, and this morning is the principal partner, Remedium Law Partners, an intellectual property rights and general legal practice firm. Dr. Ogaga, you have the floor. Thank you very much.
Good evening from Nigeria, from Abuja, precisely. I'm glad to be here, and thank you for putting this panel together. It's hard to find one specific place to start from when talking about Professor Biodun Jeyifo. He was a Renaissance man, a man of so many parts, whose abilities, seem to know no bounds wherever he turned his attention to. But in this specific area of literature, culture, and society, which was, we call his life's work, his contributions are so vast, from the aspect of activism that has already been mentioned to intellectual work and social organizing. It is hard to know where to start from. However, I know that people are going to come from different perspectives. So there's one aspect I particularly want to highlight. So much has been written. I myself have written two previous tributes before. When it was 60, when I did a piece called for BJ, Students' Random Recollections in Lieu of a Tribute. And then when it was 70, and I did a piece called The Communist as Teacher, the example of Biodun Jeyifo. So is that example I want to speak to for now. And what do I call the example of Biodun Jeyifo? If in one word, rigor. You could almost spell it out the way Aretha Franklin spelled respect in order to give it emphasis. R-E-S-P-E-C-T. We'll almost spell it that way for B-J-R-I-G-O-U-R. But since he did the latter part of his work in the US, maybe we can remove the U and just have R-I-G-O-R. But rigor. It was so much like a nickname for him that at Cornell, there was an African-American student, and he was there before I got there. I got this as stills, like kind of an urban campus still, if you like, that because of his constantly being shown more work to do, more angles to prove, other ways of looking at the same problem. At the point, he just exclaimed, "That brother is tough." And it became a joke, when sometimes I want to just a tough brother, that brother is tough. But personally, for me, I encountered it. And I am happy to be grateful for that toughness, for that insistence on rigor. In my candidacy to admission, my admission to candidacy exam at Cornell, the same year that it was a leave for Cornell, he was the one that posed me the toughest question. I might have thought that I would get the most sympathetic question from him, but he was the one who posed me the toughest question. I had come up with this idea I was calling positivist realism, with which I was going to approach my dissertation, reading of post-colonial literature from the continent Africa, from the Caribbean, and then from the United States, taking each of a text from Toni Morrison, Soyinka, and Derek Walcott. And the question he asked me was simple. How does this paradigm you are proposing respond to texts that resist realist readings? I hadn't thought particularly of it that way. I think I was still stuck in the materialist, cultural materialist way of reading the text. But once we posed that question, I realized I had a load of work ahead of me. I had to go to and for that reason, that brought me what to the question, okay, what are the kind of literary texts that resist realist reading? And it occurred to me, I already had them. I already had Toni Morrison's Beloved, which, as we know, sometimes called a ghost story. So how do you deal with, you apply a realist paradigm to that novel? And then at the same time, I had Omeros by Derek Walcott. Again, you're dealing with trauma, and I realized this is trauma. And at the same time, I realized Eleshioba actually was facing the trauma of colonization. So, and trauma is that event, that blow that shatters every frame of reference. What could be more shattering than colonialism that destroyed every frame of reference as we knew it? It was what Eleshionba faced. It was what Okonkwo faced in Things Fall Apart. And that single question made me realize I will have to go to psychoanalysis to try and unravel what Fanon had famously said was the only way to unravel the anomalies of affect that are responsible for the structure or the complex of colonialism. So that question set me on a path that eventually led to my finally successfully completing my dissertation, which got published. Now, I'm mentioning this as a personal encounter with what BJ represented as a scholar. Then secondly, the other thing, which is reflection, the willingness to self-correct, to reflect, to subject even what he himself has done to scrutiny. I mean, of course, Marx famously said that the philosophers have interpreted the world, what remains to change it, and for a radical examination of all, the radical scrutiny of all that has previously existed. He applied it to himself. It is in that reason, it's for that reason that he was never a hidebound, to use one of his favorite terms, hidebound, ossified Marxist. It was for that reason that he was so flexible. And nothing demonstrates it more than the early BJ, who was famously the most trenchant, scurrilous critic of Soyinka. One of the most quoted, passages from his writings dismissing him as a bourgeois, he's as a bourgeois aesthetic, where I could read it, but I mean, we don't have much time. I actually had it primed somewhere, but basically dismissing
you can
him.
read it. If you have it, you can read it.
Well, that is not sufficiently attuned to the historical dimensions of the post-colonial experience, simply because of his being too invested in the mytho-poetic, aspects of his work. I think it's that passage where he talks about, or rather, I would just say that's a phrase where he said, hold on, I would just need a moment to find it, where it says, he later described it as his Jacobinist, years. That earlier period when he was that trenchant in his criticism, those are his Jacobinist years. So this is what he says. In BJ's often quoted words, Soyinka's theory of art and being reflected the familiar predicament of bourgeois aesthetics. One where, now I'm quoting him, thought in a bewitched, becalmed, vaporous zone of absolute self-subsistence, frees itself from its moorings in the sea of real-life processes. So it was actually the Shoyinka was not, in fact, was too, like it belonged on a carrier realm where it was not sufficiently dealing with the real lived experiences of the colonized. But many years after, by the time he did the collection of Shoyinka's essays, Art, Dialogue, and Outrage, and did his introductory essay showing that the tropes of delineation, he had come literally almost full circle. He had revisited his earlier positions, seen where they are not quite sufficiently attuned to the complexity of post-colonial existence that he was dealing with, and followed that up with a book, Freedom and Complexity, which became the organizing principle of the essays that he collected together on Soyinka. And then down to when he did Politics, Poetry, and Postcolonialism. My argument, in fact, is that he became so willing to subject everything to review, which, by the way, is one thing that I think most distinguishes us as human beings from animals, that we are reflecting beings, that we learn from experience, that we review our positions, that we know that all knowledge is partial, all knowledge is contingent. So there can never be any absolute truth claim. For me personally, no absolute truth claim except that all human beings are equal in innate dignity. Any other claim other than that is subject to review. Is subject, is contingent, is partial. But Soyinka, by this time, BJ had become so in the heat of his turning away from his Jacobinist years, had even gone as far now as defending Soyinka in his claim that the colonial factor is merely catalytic in Death and the King's Horseman, which I think by now we can all agree is not the case. So what BJ represents for me is those two things: rigor to the extent that he becomes even his fiercest critic, viewing his positions as contingent, and in the light of new knowledge, information, understanding, insights, is willing to correct the blindnesses that attended his earlier positions. But I disagree with BJ, at least on that last point, because if his claim is that for ritual to be effective, it must not be truncated. The process must be allowed to its conclusion. The question is, so why did Eleshionba fail to do that, to show that he's master of his fate, as he claimed? If the colonial factor is merely catalytic, how could it be so determinant? How could it be so determinant to the point of preventing Eleshionba from exercising his will? So that in the end, we come down to the question of honor. And by the time we get there, even Soyinka himself, betraying this complexity that BJ has come round to at the end, comes to the fact, acknowledges the historical dimensions of the realm in which election by himself is able to exercise his own will. So those are just, then there's the humanistic side of BJ, jovial, no matter how bad the situation is, willing, as rigorous as he is in subjecting to scrutiny, at the same time as humorous, seeing the lighter side of being, keeping hope alive, traveling the country as president of ASU in the middle of the night in his Volkswagen Beetle, and being willing to mentor all. I remember my first encounter with him was on a poetic note. I showed him a poem I had just published in the African Guardian then. Took a look at it, and I just said, congratulations, but don't think you have arrived. So it was, again, by the time I came to Cornell to be a student, it was the same thing. Make a first impression, which shows promise, but let you know that you are only just beginning. Don't get carried away. I suppose 15 minutes go by quickly, and I could just
Thank you.
I think I will pause and
thank you very much. His critique of Soyinka and changing his mind, he also applied it to Babafemi Ojudu. In his early career, he also criticized Babafemi Ojudu. Later in life, he began to see him as a prominent reformer. And he started that new claim by saying, you can cite me as BJ who says Awolowo did well. So just to tell you, but if you don't mind, how do you push BJ scholarship forward? This new generation now, in what ways can they push his work forward?
Well, by, again, what I call the example of BJ, which is to never lose sight of the core humanizing factor behind, actually, the arts, literature, I see the humanities. They should humanize. And we should strive at all times to find that humanizing element in our literary cultural productions.
Thank you.
How we do it individually, I don't know, but that should be the motto. That should be the driving spirit for all that we do. I think that's the way to push forward what he did.
Those who have joined us, like Richard Joseph, Babafemi Uba, I've not seen you in over 15 years. I'm glad you were able to join. We are going to ask you to talk, but not now. Let's go back to Abuja so that we can save our transportation costs. So, Chido, the second Abuja man, how are you?
I'm fine. Thank you very much, Prof.
And congratulations. You are 60 this month, right?
No, I'll be 60 in April. April 10.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so do I go on? All right. Well, thank you
so much.
Thank you so much, Prof. I was in transit when you reached out to ask if I'll be available to do this, and I had to jump on it. I mean, I knew BJ for more than 3 decades, and he was really, in terms of the movement or tendency that I belong to within the left or Marxist movement, the theoretician, but also the figure that everybody looked up to. I mean, I'll just speak briefly about BJ's activism and his humanism. I wasn't his student, and I've not done enough work around his literary scholarship. But having said that, very
Chido,
few.
please forgive me. I forgot to introduce you. Let me introduce
you. Oh, it's okay, Prof. I think we
No,
can
I have
go
to
on.
introduce you. Please, let me
Okay.
introduce you. I sincerely apologize.
No
I won't
problem.
make that mistake again. His first degree is in philosophy from the University of Calabar, and he took a master's in journalism from Western University, Ontario, Canada, and a PhD in communication and journalism from Barcelona in Spain. He is based in Abuja, where he coordinates the African Center for Media and Information Literacy. He's a co-founder of the Media and Information Literacy Intercultural Dialogue Foundation, a non-profit association, and coordinator of the Socialist Library and Archives, a groundbreaking initiative that seeks to digitalize and preserve socialist, radical, and progressive history. Dr. Onumah has worked for over 30 years as a journalist, as an author, rights activist, and social mobilizer. Once again, I apologize for not introducing you earlier.
No problem, Prof. Yes.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Again, to thank you for putting this together. I was just saying that very few scholars could connect their scholarship and the quest for human liberation the way BJ did. And for those of us who read his Talakwa liberation column in the Nation newspaper, I think before that, the Guardian newspaper would appreciate what I'm talking about. Much of what I know about BJ in terms of his activism are things that have yet to be written. And now that BJ is gone, there were three of them: Edwin Madunagu, Bene Madunagu, and Comrade BJ, who for more than 50 years took part in this struggle. Both the struggle for democratic freedom, but more importantly, the struggle to build a more egalitarian society through the enthronement of a socialist state. First was the Ali Montgo crisis in 1978. BJ played a prominent role in that, and of course, the convening that they had in Odeomu, BJ himself, Bene Madunagu, Edwin Madunagu, and
Well, Chido's internet is creating problems, so he's gone. We will bring him back after we've invited Professor Omofolabo Ajayi to talk. She's an interdisciplinary scholar whose research, teaching, creative works cover the rich field of theater, choreography, literary, gender, and cultural studies. She's published widely in many of these disciplines. She started as a junior research fellow, Institute of African Studies, University of Ife, later renamed Babafemi Ojudu University. And in 1980, she transitioned to the newly created Department of Dramatic Arts, Ife, as a founding faculty. And he taught there till 1988, when she left for the United States on a postdoctoral foundation. A few years ago, I was there when she presented a joint virtual library to that department. We cannot thank her enough for that generosity. Later on, she moved to University of Kansas, with joint appointments in theater, women, gender, and sexuality studies. She's a prominent creative artist writing poetry, short stories, resident choreographer in many universities, recipients of many awards, Women's Hall of Fame, Fulbright Scholar, Cancer Humanities Council. Professor Ajayi-Soyinka also served as the president of African Literature Association. And I think she was given one of his major awards some years back. She's now retired, but not tired. A fellow of the Nigerian Academy of Letters. She's active and socially engaged. Please welcome the professor to make our own contributions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Falola. I like to state my position here because as a friend and junior colleague of BJ, as we all call him fondly, I appreciate being here, and I respectfully offer my heartfelt condolences to his immediate and extended family. Sometimes condolences, but seem so puerile, so inadequate. But hoping that as we gather here, our collective voices may help in alleviating the loss of a colossal member of a remarkable family and our general intellectual group. Let me express my appreciation to Professor Falola and his formidable team for organizing this conference and making the Zoom forum available for us as BJ's community of friends, colleagues, admirers in this critical performance of the ritual of saying goodbye to a loved one. In particular, and I hope I'll make this point clearer later on, in particular, this gathering enables those of us in the diaspora to share our grief collectively, together in one space with our colleagues back home, as well as BJ's friends and scholars across the continent and around the world. The ritual gathering, for whatever purpose, are powerfully cathartic. And this one, for a respective and beloved friend, is momentous. Now, a touchy point. I would like to also acknowledge those who have decided not to be in attendance at this forum. Not because they love BJ any less or object paying tributes to him. In fact, they embrace printed tributes, but rather out of consideration for BJ's immediate family. Is this gathering as hasty as they have conveyed? Ultimately, since they have no objections to tributes in print, it seems to me that the major concern is with the structure and the vehicle of communicating the tribute today. That is on Zoom, YouTube. Unlike the printed form, where many tributes have been pouring in since February 11, Zoom is a very new technology, and that enables virtual gathering in a space in place of physical gathering. Understandably then, Zoom is not yet as widely accepted as common as the centuries-old printed form in the public sphere. Perhaps then, this is more what the question, why the haste, in quotation marks, raises than invading the privacy of BJ's family. I believe that whether our respective tributes are solo solo authored imprints, or oral in collective virtual gatherings, each of us here seeks a cathartic healing and to commiserate deeply with the family and honor a phenomenal scholar, teacher, and activist. Now, over the course of some 50 years that I have known BJ, I can't believe it, I can claim to have interacted with him at these three levels: scholar, teacher, activist, all integrated into one person that he was. But my emphasis will be through him as an activist, viewing him as an activist. My first encounter with BJ was at the University of Ibadan bookstore. I was leafing through Solstice Nissin's Gulag Archipelago, wondering if I was ready for such a heavy reading, about 600 pages. When BJ materialized behind me, convinced me it was worth reading and promptly bought it for me. This was at a time when Marxism was viewed with suspicion in the West and its discontents, that is, the former colonies. But from then on, BJ became a presence in my life and silently functioned as a mentor long before the word mentorship seeped into popular reference. BJ seamlessly blended his teaching and scholarship at the University of Ife, now Babafemi Ojudu University, with his activism. This was exemplified in the defining role he played in the foundation of ASU, the Academic Staff Union of Universities, in 1978. BJ is another way to spell activism within ASU, whether local or national, among university workers, rural clinics, or at the countless police checkpoints that litter the roads throughout the country. BJ was relentless in his quest for a more just, equitable, and less corrupt Nigeria. His activism was purposeful, goal-oriented, in the dialectics of a people striving to forge one nationhood out of many in a colonial dystopia confusion. An incorrigible socialist, BJ's activism remained grounded in Marxist ideology, but he was not limited by it. I think Dr. Ifowodo had already touched on that. He was cognizant of the immediate realities of his base and cast his lot with the Talakawas, which he had written a lot about, and the marginalized of Nigeria and beyond. He was committed to raising consciousness and educating everybody, especially the marginalized, of their rights. BJ did not ignore his academic base either. He was a vocal critic of how the military authoritarianism was eroding the integrity of the university system, while the university leadership was being corrupted for personal political favors. With BJ's encouragement, I got elected into the Senate at Ife as a faculty representative. That was controversial in itself. But I moved up. BJ again soon recruited me to run as secretary for ASU Ife branch. And before I knew it, I was a national ASU representative. ASU was radically invested in restoring universities' integrity and academic excellence, again, which were being gravely eroded. In this atmosphere, confrontation with the military regime was inevitable, and Ife was a hotbed, along with other radical universities trying to hold the feet of the university leadership to the fire, to observe the tenets of academic scholarship and what universities should be. I will cite a couple more of memorable instances where BJ's scholarship as a literary critic and theorist flowed effortlessly into his activism. The first was Over at Aidu's Anowa, the play that was eventually selected to celebrate University of Ife's 25th anniversary. The ending of this play was drastically rewritten to reflect the spirit of celebration, but it meaninglessly contradicted Aidu's powerful indictment of Africans' complicity in the European slave trade and the deafening silence of inaccountability in post-independent Ghana and other African countries. The rewrite was academically dishonest and an egregious display of literary ignorance. BJ immediately fired off a salvo to the Guardian newspaper. Rejoinders soon followed and led into an impromptu but highly contentious conference at Ife, which examined the rights of the author, the significance of the play, the role of literature in our society. Aidu was not amused when she read my published account of this years later. Another instance was during a conference at Cornell University, where by this time I was just beginning my postdoctoral Mellon Fellowship. Again, thanks to BJ. Professor Spivak, one of the keynote speakers at the conference, and the unchallenged voice of authority for third world women, post-colonial and deconstruction studies, felt affronted by some comments I had made at the conference. So she proceeded to twist my comments around and used it to swipe the whole of African scholarship of literary criticism. Just a few months old in the USA, I had no idea what she was talking about. I did not know that already brewing between African American scholars and Spivak was a storm that I waded into. To say BJ was outraged would be an understatement. His 25-page article exposing Spivak's academic imperialism was translated into at least 3 European languages and quickly went viral in quotation, over the fax technology, because we had just fax technologies in the 1980s. BJ methodically and critically analyzed Spivak's superficial grasp of African literary scholarship and questioned her so-called authority on behalf of third world women and post-colonial studies. He implied in his analysis that she should limit herself to deconstructing the subaltern of continental India. My response later, titled A Question of Power, many upcoming young scholars of Scholar expressed how the confrontation and BJ's intervention had done them a great service towards having a smoother path in advancing their career. In my birthday card to BJ just this January, I recalled when some 37 years ago, when Western capitalism was dousing the fire of Marxist ideology in the Soviet Union and breaking the Union up. BJ's answering machine mirrored the impact of that painful disintegration on him. His telephone message went from a lengthy, breezy exhortation of Marxist promise of an egalitarian society where workers unite against the compradors to an abrupt and terse leave a message. But as I told him, brief or lengthy, BJ's messages, coupled with his meaningful and necessary activism and interventions, remain powerful and relevant to everybody he touched, directly or indirectly, either in the classroom, the public space, or on the battlefield of ideas or at social gatherings. He held on to his humanity, never abandoning his crusade for a just and equitable society. To conclude, I want to iterate that BJ brought us here today, just as he has galvanized the numerous print tributes that have been pouring it ever since February 11. But our love for him brought us here. We get up in spite of the pain we're all feeling. We get up and are here to remember what he meant to us and what he will always mean beyond us. This is the power of his legacy. BJ was a unifier, not because he would compromise or abandon his principles, but because he would engage you in as passionately as he could, so he could use your arguments to clarify and make you see his point of view. I hope his passing will not separate us, his friends, in spite of our differences of opinion over when and how we honor him. Again, as in my printed tribute, my deep condolences to all members of BJ's family, immediate and extended. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I like the use of family that you've invoked 3 times, because as scholars, we have a scholarly community in which we see ourselves as a family. And we also see ourselves as living in different ecosystems. I'm sure there will be other events of this nature. Because as Jesus Christ said, when they asked, when are you going to see your mother? And he said, he already had followers, disciples. And those who follow him are members of his family. So that as we multiply these families in different zones, people join him from Hungary, from Ukraine, from China. The late Professor Ajayi once told me a proverb that it is after your death that we know the geography of your relations. I'm quoting word for word. That when we are alive, nobody knows the geography of our relationship. It's when we're dead that they will know. We know somebody in Zimbabwe and Afghanistan. And I'm glad we're honoring him. 2 quick issues. You know, I don't know whether you know, BJ was also insistent on changing the ending of Okediji's realm. That he said that the way that book closed did not honor labor and labor activism. And the pressure of the man, why don't you change the ending? So we have the Amata story here and what BJ himself was suggesting to Okediji to do. How do we resolve that?
If you want me to reply?
Please, please, yes.
If the changing is done within the knowledge of the original creator. I mean, we adapt plays, we adapt stories. There's nothing new in that. But if the changing contradicts or just, reverses completely the original intention, the tension of the original author's intention, purpose, then there is a problem in that. When we adapt stories, there is a continuous train of thought from the beginning to the end. You don't start the story as it was and then suddenly change it that in a way that has no bearing to what is the essence of scholarship, of the academic integrity. It destroys what we do in the academy. And I think that was the point that BJ was making.
Well,
we didn't get...
Yeah.
Okay.
I hope Professor Femi Ojudu would make a comment on this. Because when Tunde Kelani put his mommy into Nollywood, it was Kelani that introduced the Babalawo into the play and how the man made some money from diabolical means. So we're going back to Chido. Chido, I think he's still having challenges. Are you all right now? Can you talk now?
Yes, I can.
Please.
Can you see me now? Yes. All right. Sorry for that. I wasn't sure what happened exactly. I wouldn't want to suggest it's part of the Abuja problem. But I was talking about BJ's humanism.
Can you introduce what you want to say so that when we cut this segment, it makes sense?
Yeah, so I was talking about BJ's his activism and humanism. And I mentioned that much of what we know or we should know about BJ's activism hasn't been written. Of course, his involvement in the anti-poverty movement that started in the early 70s alongside Comrade Edwin Madunagu and Bene Madunagu, the Revolutionary Directorate, RD, and so on. But the two key, well, except for ASU, which is really in the public domain, the two most important roles that Comrade BJ played was first in terms of real practical approach to the whole question of rebuilding society and applying theory to practice, was his role in the Ali Mongo crisis of 1978. And of course, much later, or earlier before then, the intervention in 1976 at the Odeomu commune. That experience have yet to be written, and hopefully it will be written someday. But then moving forward and talking about BJ's humanism, and what I would like to refer to as BJ's last act was setting up what has become perhaps the largest opportunity for the left to continue to reproduce itself in terms of scholarship, literature, and so on. So 5 years ago, when his close comrade and friend Edwin Madunagu turned 75, he had donated his lifelong collection to the Nigerian left. And the challenge was what to do with these materials, thousands of books, newspaper cuttings, different Nigerian newspapers, all dating back to pre-independence period. We had this stack of materials littered around Calabar in 3 different locations. BJ was front and center in the celebration for Madunagu's 75th birthday, just as he was. I remember 20 years ago exactly, I was traveling between New York and Boston when it occurred to me that Comrade Eddie was going to turn 60, and had gotten in touch with Comrade BJ and wanted to know what we would do, and immediately I had suggested the idea of putting together his essays into a collection, and BJ quickly agreed to it. And luckily for us, I had been following Comrade Eddie throughout his stay and his essay, his writings at The Guardian. I had that collection, and with the help of BJ, we were able to put together this volume. Myself, BJ, Bene Madunagu, and Kayode Komolafe. So 5 years ago, we faced the quandary of what to do with all of these materials. And through the leadership of BJ, we were able to, BJ came up with the idea. We were confused and looking for what to do. And it was BJ's insistence and his leadership that led to what we call the Socialist Library and Archives today, which has thousands, as I mentioned earlier, thousands of materials on left culture, literature, and all of that we are also digitalizing for future generation. But BJ didn't stop at helping to set up this initiative. Where we started solar, it was a great initiative. The potentials were great, but we didn't know what to do. It had to be funded. We were in crisis in terms of sustainability. And then one day, the BJ called the core of the group and said, well, I've just been commissioned to do a book on Soyinka. I don't know whether it's Heinemann or one of these US publishing companies had started some public pocket publications they wanted to do on key scholars around the world, and it fell on BJ to do the one on Soyinka. And he said, well, you know what? I'm going to do this for the sake of solar. I'm going to, everything that comes from this book minus the taxes. And you know, in the United States, how important taxes are, but whatever it is they take out as taxes, I'm going to donate everything that remains from this project to solar, which was what he did, and it was a hefty sum, and that has helped solar, to sustain itself in the last 3 years. BJ invested so much energy in this archive, partly because of his own experience. I think for many years he had left the country and had all his newspapers and magazines and books and other publications, and somehow the environment or elements destroyed some of these things, and it was quite painful for him. If at all there was something he reeled about for much of his life, it was the loss of this material. Thankfully, his comrade and friend Edwin Madunagu had also ensured that a lot of these materials were kept in solar. When he now visited and saw many of the things, at least those that were personal to him, his books and other collections, it was really gratifying. So we looked forward. I think Comrade Ogaga had mentioned this. 2 years ago, we were at Museum Center to mark the 90th birthday of Professor Wale Okediran, and BJ was the keynote speaker. He looked quite frail, and I was really worried for his health. So it was a surprise when we came back to that place just last month to mark his own 80th birthday. And quite unlike BJ, he was, he was boisterous. I remember in late December when he sent out a note to inform us that he had returned to the country. And I said, oh, we're all looking forward to his birthday in January, and that I hope there'll be plenty of Ashwebi. And he said, God forbid. So that's that's BJ, typical of BJ, very austere. But when we saw him on January 5th in Lagos, he was just all over the place, excited, greeting family and friends and comrades and admirers and students and so on. And we have the Wale Okediran Center to thank for that opportunity. But one of the things that BJ said, and I don't know how many of us who were at that hall paid attention. Just to quickly wrap up, Ogaga talked about his rigor. most times he would send BJ a one-line question or in an email, and he will respond. So I found myself most times when BJ responds, sometimes he'll be typing like forever on WhatsApp. And then each time I need to reply to him, I'll have to literally copy out the email and put it in a Word document. And sometimes just the response to a 1-line or 2-line question has metamorphosed into a 3 or 4-page response. So you have to go back and start reading and rereading it to be able to then respond to him. And he was always eager to get a response. And he would say, "Oh, comrade, I sent you a response 2 days ago or 3 days ago. Why haven't you responded to this?" And it used to be that anytime comrade BJ would send a message, if I wasn't in the state of mind to respond, I wouldn't open the email. I'll wait until I was psychologically and emotionally, knowing full well that you had to take your time and read through this response and, line by line, because he was going to, even if after writing 4 pages of materials in response to your 1 or 2-line question, and then you don't respond appropriately, he's going to come back and then, find holes in your response and expect a response. So, yes, he was quite rigorous, not just in scholarship, but even in personal relationship. The other thing I would just quickly say was also the fact that in addition to being rigorous, his consistency. I mentioned earlier that I'd known him for about 3 decades. Throughout that period, he had not deviated in terms of his ideological position, the clarity of his thoughts and ideas in terms of human liberation. And I'll quickly just paraphrase what he said at the Soyinka event early last year to capture the essence of what I'm saying, where he mentioned that competition would have to take a backseat to cooperation, that there has to be a post-capitalist approach to development, and that we can't survive as species the current world order. And then finally, he also took a shot at many people who mouthed the whole concept of restructuring in Nigeria, and warned us that restructuring shouldn't stop at just the geopolitical restructuring of the country. We need to, both the power relations, particularly in terms of wealth, has to be restructured, and that's how our society would make progress. So on that note, again, let me thank you, Professor Falola, and the panel, and all those who have been part of this process for coming together to celebrate BJ. He was a brilliant and wonderful scholar, but he was also a superb human being. Thank you.
Thank you. Ambassador Benny Busia, thanks for joining us. We'll give you time to talk later on. Jaman, who knows BJ very well, we'll all give you a few minutes to talk. Chido, so what would be his legacy? His books or activism?
Well, it depends on who you are talking to, but for me, it's both. And I wanted to, when I saw German's, the icon from German, I wanted to mention something. I talked about, and Ogaga has stressed this, how he invested in young people. So when you look at one of his book, I think is let me see, Against the Predators Republic, where he dedicated to German, Akinshola, Edwin Madunago, Ni Oshundare, who says from the first column, we are unstinting in their encouragement. And then below it, he also dedicates to Akin, Adeshokon, Kunle Ajibade, Kayode, Komolafe, Dapolon Yomi, and Chido Onumah. And then he ends with, I look at them and I'm confident that the torch will be passed to future generation. So I really, he invested so much in young people, both in terms of his scholarship and the work he did. So both would endure through people he taught, through people who came in contact with him, through people who worked with him ideologically, politically, and so on.
So why do you think members of the left fight a lot?
Wow.
There was some fights too, calling themselves names, you're Trotsky, you're Cuban, you're this. Why is the fight always very intense?
Prof, genuinely, I don't think I have the answer to that question. Maybe Baba, somebody like Baba Aye, who is more grounded than I am in that area, would provide some answer. But I think it has to do with human nature and also our socialization. But ultimately, whether you are a Trotskyite or Stalinist or Maoist, the idea, in my own estimation, is to change human relations for the better, to ensure we have a more equitable and egalitarian society. Perhaps in the loose Yoruba translation, it could say Onokon Waja, but whether it can apply here, it's also, you are the historian, Prof. You can help us understand whether that analogy, we are all heading to the same marketplace. Whether we'll get there is we'll wait and see.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to invite the president of the Nigerian African Writers Association, Professor Wale Okediran, a doctor, writer, former member of parliament. I think he's one of the best traveled literary scholars in the world, and enjoy his travelogue. He released one 3 days ago on his experience in Pakistan. He's also a lover of soccer. One time I was looking for him. He was in Morocco or somewhere to watch a game. Indeed, he received a university scholarship for sports for his medical school education. We have to thank him for the Ebedi International Writers Residency. And I thank him also for letting us know each new set, 4 or 5 of them, integrated into the community, and they're all doing well. He's published 14 novels, 10 are adult fiction, 3 are for children. And he's won awards. Tenants of the House was co-winner of the Wale Okediran Prize for African Literature. We have not done that prize for some years because I serve on the jury with our friend from Ghana. And he launched the US edition of his award-winning book in Atlanta in 2012. He's a tireless worker. As the Secretary General of the Pan-African Writers Association, he uses his own private money for many of his activities. We are very grateful to you, sir. And please give us your reflection.
Yes. Thank you, Prof. And I also join other people to thank you for putting this together, because Professor Biodun Jeyifo was somebody that I would say a multi-dimensional person. I mean, I am a very good example because I wasn't a student. I wasn't, student in the sense that I was not, I didn't have a formal training in English literature or Marxism or any of all those big stuff. I was just an ordinary medical doctor who loves to write. And again, something about BJ was that he has a nose for fishing out people that he believes are potential radicals and people who can move the frontiers of activism forwards. We started together when I was at University of Ife. And I think that university has this habit of turning people into radicals, whether you're a student or, if I would say there's no difference between the students and teachers of Ife. They are all radicals. So I was the president of the Medical Students Association in the 70s. And we had an issue with one of our lecturers, a pathologist, Dr. Laja, who, according to story at that time, performed a postmortem on a victim of, I think, a domestic issue. And the police wanted him to change the report of the postmortem to suit what they wanted to relate to the public. And when he refused, he was locked up. And the news came to reach us on the campus. And as the president of the Medical Students Association, we decided to march to More police station. But the point was that the distance from the gates to the campus was too long. I mean, it was very far. And then, luckily for us, one of our lecturers, my former professor of dermatology, Professor Femi Ojudu of President Mamori, came to our rescue, and between him and Biodun Jeyifo, provided us with means to mobilize students to the police station in More. We had a convoy of 10 buses, and there we were able to. They also made sure that the press came to the scene, and long and short of it was that we were able to get the release of our lecturer from the hands of the police. And since that time, BJ was happy with me. He thought, I think secretly, he wanted to produce another Frantz Fanon, another radical writer, medical doctor. And we kept on with each other. And when I moved to Ibadan to start my medical practice, I was still writing. And I was at that time, General Secretary of the Association of Nigerian Authors. And that was when we had the problem with the Kensarua issue, the Ogoni 5 issue. And Kensarua was in detention in Port Harcourt, and we writers had to organize rallies to see how we could save him. And BJ was always there to help us, to provide resources for our rallies. I was the courier smuggling material to Kensarua in Port Harcourt through some channels. Our effort, unfortunately, was not enough to save Kensarua. But that was how myself and Biodun Jeyifo became close. And I wasn't a Marxist, but he thought that with my radicalism from Ife and the medical background, he used to regale me with tales of Frantz Fanon, Anton Chekhov, and all these people. But so when I told him I decided to go into politics, he was a bit shocked that this is somebody who wanted to go to the left. He is now going to the other side. And I told him that, look, I can continue my activism in politics. So I was in the House of Representatives under President Obasanjo, and we did what we could do at that time, stop the third term ambition and all those stuff. And when I came out of the political experience with my book, Tenants of the House, BJ was so happy with it, although he thought he wanted the book to be autobiographical. But I told him that I didn't want to get sued by anybody. That's why I had to make it into a faction, facts and fiction together. But all the same, he loved the book. And according to him, he read in and out and even did a review. And I was pleasantly surprised when the review came out under what he called patriotism, democracy, and fractured storytelling in and around Wale Okediran's Tenant of the House. And I think this book was part of the collection that he produced under Against the Predators Republic, the book that was released by Carolina Academy in 2016. And we were proud to that when I was the national president of the Association of Nigerian Authors in 2006. We decided to celebrate the 20 years of Wale Okediran's Nobel Award. And we thought that, the only person, well, not the only person, the best person to give us a keynote was Biodun Jeyifo. And as writers, we didn't have enough funds to get him into Ife from his base. But he was, we were so happy. He funded himself and came for the event that took place at the University of Ife. It was a big event, and we were able to, Nadine Gordimer, the former Nobel laureate, was also there. It was a big event, and BJ spoke very well about the Nobel Prize and how it's affecting African writers and co. In fact, this year we make it 40 years of the Nobel Award. And I was already preparing a letter to send to him again, to BJ, that in November, we're going to have him to come and repeat the keynote. Unfortunately, he's not here today. I mean, he won't be able to do. But just like the other speakers have said, Biodun Jeyifo is somebody that is an amazing character. He was able to marry the town and the gown. I mean, whatever he did in the academic sector, he could also do outside. Even though I won't call myself a strictly academic person, I'm an outsider, just like Albert Camus would say. I came from the non-academic side. But he was able to fish me out because of my, induced radicalism, which has already almost gone now. But and then the other thing that I want to also say that is humanity that people have mentioned, because in 2013 I got a sponsorship by this airline to go for a US tour of my book Tenants of the House, and Arik Air sponsored my trip to the US to read in 20 states. And my itinerary passed through Harvard in Cambridge. And that was my first time in that famous university. And I was a bit scared of how to handle myself. And then BJ was there at that time. And he came to my support. I mobilized people for my reading. And when I thought, and at the end of the whole thing, he was so happy with me. He said I gave a good account of myself and gave me a dinner on September 30, 2013. I remember that time, one of the hangouts around Cambridge, Massachusetts. He took me to dinner. And by and large, we continue our relationship. And what I want to just end up by saying is to say that the likes of BJ are very scarce now. But I think I don't want to, he's here now. I don't want to say it's because he's here, but Professor Toyin Falola is somebody who's also towing that line. Anytime he comes to Accra, we're always around to hear all his lectures and co. And the same thing BJ was doing. Like people said, he invested in young people. He invested in people he believed had promise. And by and large, he makes you achieve more than you can. I never knew I could do so many of the things I did, particularly in literature. I mean, somebody coming from the medical background. I mean, I became the national president of the National Authors, and I'm now here in Accra as the Secretary General of the Pan-African Writers Association, all because, all due to some of the support I got from the likes of BJ, or Sofison, Falola, and the other people who are in the humanities. And they didn't see those of us in the science crossing into humanities. as impostors or threats. And I think this kind of humanity and humanism is something we should encourage. I wish him and the family, I want to also join in condoling the family. And by God's grace, I'll be going down to Ibadan for the funeral on March 3rd. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, and Professor Kofi Anyidoho has been struggling to join us. He's having challenges using his phone. He's calling me now too. Sir, is there a younger person who can help you? Hello?
I see his face. Is there?
Is there? He wants to join us. It's been for the last 1 hour, his phone joins and he's struggling, and we have been talking. Hopefully, if you can put on your video with your phone, we can assist you, sir. Okay. So, can I ask you a question about associations and movements? You notice when, he's joining us now. Professor Anyidoho, that's not you. Who joined on your behalf? That's not him. Baba Anyidoho, where are you? That's not him there. So we can see when Chido was talking, he made reference to associations, book donations to associations. And you are leading one now. Can an individual without an association, how far can we go? Without a movement, how far can we go?
Yes, thank you, Prof. Well, there's this saying that if you want to go fast, you go on your own. You on your own. But if you want to go on for a long time, you go together. I think associations are there to support each person in the association, and through associations, we have a larger reach than one could have if you are all alone. I can also attest to the fact that as good as associations are in promoting the ideals or ideas of a group, it also has its own challenges. You mentioned the issue of the Marxists and their occasional squabbles. So we also have among writers, they always, sometimes writers can be almost like politicians when it comes to having some tips. But on the long run, I think associations are very necessary and very essential to promote ideals of a group, particularly writers. Especially, you also understand that writing is a very lonely profession, and also it's not a very popular area of undertaking. It's easier to get funds to do a beauty pageant than to do a writers' conference. Or to go for football, for the money they pay for football fans, more than they give to groups of writers. So we need each other, and we need to come together to move. That is the way I answer it.
Thank you. Thank you. The panelist members exercise patience. Don't respond. Write down anything you want to respond to. Because if we don't give people opportunity to talk and give their tributes, they will be they'll become disappointed. They are here just to talk about BJ, because this is not the usual academic presentation. They just want to honor a great man. So if you want to talk, please indicate by raising your hand and I will call you. Please do not talk for long. We know you love him. You have many things to say, but please give space to other people to talk. The president of ASU, I notice you, is Richard Joseph, has been his friend for so many years. Baba Kofi is entering again. That is his phone number. So let's now begin. If you want to talk, do not be too long so that we can take as many people as possible. Ambassador Abenabusia, please, you have the floor. Thank you for joining us. That's another iconic figure.
Thank you so much. I will be very brief. I just want to say, to acknowledge what has already been mentioned, and that is BJ's support of his colleagues. And I want to pay tribute to something very particular. When in the, the mid-80s, Carol Boyce Davis, Ann Adams, Elaine Savory, and I started this series of conversations at African Literature about African feminisms and Caribbean feminisms. The four of us, sorry about the plane, the four of us are in that set of conversations led to the publications Nambika and Out of the Kumbla, published wonderfully by Kasahun Chekole. It was tough and difficult and very challenging conversations. And I want to pay tribute to the brothers who were there, who hung in there with us, including Kasahun. And two of them, we've lost both of them this year, the late Mbai Cham and BJ. BJ was there, he was fierce, he was critical, he was encouraging, he cajoled, and then was always ready to break bread and share a glass of wine afterwards. And for me, it was the first years of my arrival in the States. The first of those, I don't think I even had been reappointed yet. It was definitely before I got tenure when those conversations started. So his unflagging support there, quietly present, thinking, taking you on, it was really important. And I just want to put that on the record. And thank you for letting me say that.
Thank you. Professor Omofolabo Ajayi. So somebody sent a question, said, when he was a student at Ife, BJ was hostile to students who are not of the left tradition. What's your experience? So please unmute her, please.
Okay. I'm surprised at that statement. And I had a different experience, or, my perception of the whole thing. I wasn't a student. I wasn't BJ's student in the conventional sense. And like I said, I was his junior colleague at Ife. But my opinion, or my observation, was that BJ was friendly, was nurturing to students in the theater department. He like I said, he was an incorrigible Marxist. He was very passionate about it. But I thought he also extended, he tried to convert as, many students as possible, to make them question through his teaching, because some of our students took classes with him. So through his teaching, his analysis, his activities, because we would teach in classroom, go and meet in the bucketeria later, or social, for social gathering, drink palm wine, eat the buka. And that's all I can say. I'm sorry, I can't address that more concretely, more
Thank
directly.
you. Professor Adekoya from Babafemi Ojudu University. Did you meet him? Professor Adekoya.
I did.
Okay.
Actually, we parleyed for some time until I lost my faith in Marxism. And so we parted ways. But my own contribution really is going to be on what I consider to be his most important contribution to literature, whether we are talking of Nigerian literature, oral literature, African literature, or world literature. And that is the book titled The Yoruba Popular Traveling Theatre of Nigeria. For me, that is the most significant legacy BJ has left for humanity. And in fact, his biggest contribution to humanity. The book was a big project. It was published by Nigeria Magazine. It was the report of a research project. It had a research assistant, Boyega Ajayi, and the idea was to document the Yoruba popular traveling theater for the world. And it was masterfully accomplished. Painstakingly, thoroughly done. And I think that he and Boyega Ajayi, his research assistant, deserve an award by the National Council for Arts and Culture for that project, because that is the only book we have on the Yoruba popular traveling theater. And so for me, that is his most significant contribution to humanity, to literature. Now, the question that was asked by a student, one of BJ's students at FNAL those days, BJ didn't hide his partisanship. When it comes to matters of struggle, class struggle, fighting for workers' rights, he didn't hide it. In fact, I read a piece where Soyinka gave a lecture that's celebrating Walter Rodney. And then, after he had given the lecture, BJ took up the microphone and said there was no room for staying, what they call it, sitting on the fence, that Soyinka should take a position on matters of ideology, whether you want to be on the right or on the left, but maintaining a paradoxical position, that makes you neither a rat nor a bird, just confusing things. And people started saying, students started shouting, take a position, take a position. So as far as struggle is concerned, fighting for workers' rights, BJ didn't hide his partisanship. In fact, they started a review called Positive Review. They also had this program, what is it called? Positive Posters. The Unified Bookshop used to have a big stack of positive posters. These are slogans promoting socialism. So if a student who wasn't inclined towards Marxism or socialism was in BJ's class, such a student will not really derive maximum benefit. Because his lectures were ideologically oriented. And he will give you documents to support that, to make you see why that is the way to go. So
Thank you, Professor Adekoya. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We have his former student here who became a distinguished politician, ran to become a state governor, and you have to apologize that I won't be able to spend a long time introducing him because of time. He's famous. He's appeared on this program before. He served as a journalist, media entrepreneur, politician. You cannot write the history of the country's democratic struggle without him. And he continues to talk about democracy, social justice. Thanks for joining us. You are
Thank you very much. Yes, I was.
I will give you 10 minutes.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
I was. Let me quickly apologize for coming in late. I was in Ife for a meeting which I thought would last for 1 hour, and we spent 5 hours. Having said that, let me say that let me start from the accusation of BJ not being friendly with students who are not Marxists. I don't think that is true. It's not true at all. He never consciously tried to make anyone a Marxist, or a communist or whatever. We're so fond of him, the way he became a father, a friend, and the way he gave us the freedom to ask him questions and for him to provide answers, and for him to gear us to go and even seek other answers to those questions. I mean, I could remember a time. Yes, I could remember a time when he came to class, with the lyrics of Fela songs, and he told us these songs are not just music; they are also poetry. And you could say that Fela wasn't a Marxist; he wasn't at all, but he was very political, and he felt that with his music he can make clear to us, what politics we can find in African literature. He paid attention to everything, to our needs, to our struggles, and to our aspirations. He opens your mind, to see what your society is like, what it ought to be. That is what I saw in BJ. I didn't see a man who tried to, spoon feed his students to become Marxists. No, I never saw that in the BJ. We knew his position. In fact, most of us that he mentored never ended up as Marxists, but we ended up being students who pay attention to the situation of our country, to the situation of politics, of leadership, and with the passion to want to see if we could change it. That's why Ekunle Ajibade, myself, Dakpolo Yomin, and many others who passed through him became who we became. We became that because we saw an example in him. We saw a man who struggled for workers.
We'll come back to you. Bye-bye.
Hello?
Oh, you're back again? Okay.
I'm back, yes. So that is it. It just made it clear to you what your challenges are in your society, and then give you options on how you could tackle those challenges. And that for me was the greatest thing about him. It's not about setting up students or forcing them to buy his ideology. No, that was never what I experienced from him. Hello?
You have other contributions, or you are done?
No, I'm not done. I'm just saying that, look, it's someone like me cannot but be grateful to him. I came to the university an innocent boy who, just wanted to collect a degree in English. And early in our entrance to the school, we found him very profound. We found him in him a great teacher. We found in him a father, and we find him a friend. We find in him a friend. And that, then distinguishes between whether we are going to go and study pure English or we go to African literature. And when we got there, he then took us on a tour, academic tour of the world. and we're able to make our choices without anybody spoon-feeding us. And it wasn't just him. It was also a collective of other lecturers in the department and outside the department. Even as early as year 1, year 2, we were beginning to interrogate, a lot of issues in society. We want to write like him. We want to speak like him. We wanted to act like him. And we began to write, for newspapers and, even tailoring our writings to the way he wrote his columns, in those days. So he had impact on us. He was able to influence us, but he never at any time tried to, force feed us with his ideology. Yeah.
Thank
Can
you.
I say something, Professor Falola?
Please, Dr. Ogaga, please.
I would just say that, like all teachers tend to be drawn to those students who they observe to have, shall we call it a promise, who they see in a potential, who are interested in the subject, who display a certain intellectual acumen that, like all teachers, therefore makes them pay attention to them. And they don't have to be Marxists. And if they are Marxists, you started earlier by saying the fights on the left between Trotskyites, Leninists, Maoists, and so on. No, it is first and foremost the curiosity, that willingness to plow into the material, take it seriously, and apply yourself to it. That cuts across. And I don't think it's only BJ, any teacher. In fact, Soyinka was also famously accused of teaching only to the so-called brightest in his class. That even came up in the course of our celebration of BJ just last month. And even BJ also accusing Soyinka, whom he had enrolled in a class because of him, but not showing up enough. So it is that thing more than that he was consciously trying to groom Marxists or only interested in the ones who wanted to be Marxists that I think whoever made that complaint is misreading, that teachers generally tend to like.
Thank you, Professor Femi Uba. Professor Femi Uba, he was at Ife. He wrote a brilliant memoir, which I would recommend to all of you to read, detailing his experience in theater at Ife. Professor Femi Uba, the great. Thanks for joining us, sir. Go ahead, please. Did you overlap with Professor Ajayi-Soyinka? I think, were you there at the same time or he left before?
Yeah.
Professor Femi Uba, please talk. I think he's having challenges. Can you unmute him? I don't think it's from our end because we are very efficient.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. My deepest sympathy, first of all, to Bige's family and friends such as Femi, Yemi Ogunbi, Femi Ojudu, Yemi Durotoye, and Folabo Ajayi. Bige was a colleague of mine at Ife, and I wasn't in Bige's Marxist circle, not because I dislike Marxism, but because I didn't really understand it at the time. In fact, it was Bige's writing that made me begin to appreciate it. Although I vehemently disagreed with him, with his thoughts in his essay, Who is Afraid of Election Over? Now, Bige for me possessed this indomitable spirit that dared death itself. I have observed this even long before the definitive beginning of his illness. It was the inimitable spirit that described his Marxist convictions in the 1970s and 80s. It was the selfless spirit that made him to be the first to accept the invitation to attend my first shrift in 2014, which he wanted to do even without any consideration of any honorarium. He wanted to do it, just personally. More to the point of his suffering, it was the unrelenting spirit that gave him the impetus to be the keynote speaker at Teju Olaniyan's memorial in Wisconsin, despite the critical nature of his illness. It was the indefatigable spirit that compelled him, no matter what resulted on the famished road, to journey forth to Kongi's 90th. And he would have continued to demonstrate such combative will if not limited by death. The enviable, formidable spirit, in fact, recalls Elizabeth's bravado in the market in Death and the King's Horseman when confronted by the Not I Bird sequence. Quote, when the Not I Bird perched upon my roof, bade him seek his nest again, safe, without care or fear, I unrolled my welcome mat for him to see. Not I flew happily away. You'll hear his voice no more in this lifetime. My reign is loosened. I am master of my fate. Please help me raise the song. Agbe to lorore taro ore aluko toromo rego smo oye baba eyoku toromo re gbagogo ide o àwa ò lè ta ọ̀rọ̀ ìwọ̀n yẹn ká má bá olùṣeré ìmọ̀ràn ó lélẹ̀ o. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. So before you go, there were some ideological tensions in the dramas, especially the convocation plays in the 80s, between people like Olarotimi, the way the acts were put together, and people like BJ. What are your reflections on those, that period? Please unmute him. No, we can't hear you. I think our partners have. Okay, you can talk now. Yes.
Yeah. I was an actor in that play, Death and the King's Horseman. I played Lakunle, and as far as I knew, it was a brilliant, play. I didn't understand much of it. Well, some of it, anyway. But I think it was beautiful poetry and all that. And so my reflection of Lakunle is that we rehearsed, under duress.
Death and the King's Horseman.
Huh?
Death and the
What?
King's Horseman. Lakunle is the Lion and the Jewel.
Oh, I'm sorry. Olunde.
Yeah.
Olunde. I was Lakunle too, but Olunde, yeah. So, I think we are under duress because I wasn't very happy with Mrs. Pilkins, and we had many difficulties in relating as an actor. And Soyinka knew this. But then we struggled through it. But my one thing really in the production was that there was this humming, air conditioning, that didn't allow my voice to project. And I was criticized for this because I was told that it's because I was losing my voice. Till today, I still tell WS that it wasn't my voice. It was it was a new hall. The air conditioning was blasting like nobody's business. And for my voice to penetrate, that was very difficult. But unfortunately, it was just one performance because we were going to revive it because it was going to make some changes in the in the with the actors, especially with Mrs. Spilkins. But we were not able to do that, which regrettably.
Thank you,
So
sir. Thank you, sir. For those of you who are not familiar with him, he has an excellent memoir. I was privileged to read it at the manuscript level. We cannot thank you enough. You're one of the iconic figures of that movement. Professor Richard Joseph, he knows BJ very, very well for over 40 years. Professor Richard Joseph.
Thank you. Thank you. So glad to be here. But it's more like 50 years, not 40. Because
Please, can you adjust your chair so that we can see?
Sorry, I will do it. You will hear me in 2 minutes.
It's better now.
Okay, very good. You can see the felt hat I got to wear, because of the weather here. I turned it into a little bit of a Yoruba cap. So anyway, make me present. All right, let me just take a few minutes there to celebrate this very, very great man. In fact, the conversation that took place, I arrived in 1976. He did it bad. And so I plunged right into that community. I was accepted in the community, and in fact, I remained part of that community. But the debate between BJ and Soyinka, you all brought it up beginning. And I was thinking, it really is, it's the mortal world and the eternal world. And I think now that we see with BJ, he is now, that division is gone because he's now, he's a spirit among us now. Right? And so it's interesting to reflect on that. But I want to say a couple of things. I was glad to hear about solar because, as you know, Prof, that we started, February 7th of last year, we launched the Richard Joseph Learning Center, the NIA, a collection of my books and archives. And that was just a phase. And the next phase is going to follow because I have my core library and my core archives. And I believe that, my people should have access to it, just as you should have access to, that all the teachings. And that's why, I went to Sudan, it didn't work out. I came to Nigeria, and I will continue. I think that's very important. The other thing I want to mention is this is a time we're living through right now, right? We've all come through 2025 with what has happened and how it has impacted us, and also how it has impacted the African world. And I think of what BJ's contribution would have been like in speaking back to all the, all the horrible stuff that's been directed to people of color and people, of our continent and so on. But I am involved in that, and I will be on March. I invite you. You'll be hearing it March 6th. We're going to be Professor Okome has gathered together 4 of my former students, Scott Taylor, Adikun Agbaje, Egosa Usagi. And so 10 a.m. Eastern US, we will be speaking to this topic. And of course, but the last thing I want to say about BJ is that I have a text that he wrote. I believe it was going to be for my 70th anniversary birthday. And we have Professor Ayo Lukotun is the one who promoted that. And I think one of the things that came about is that BJ wrote a 1,000-word essay, which I will share with you along with my papers. But to give you an example of how BJ has been so present in our lives in so many ways, I treasure him. I miss him, but at the same time, he's always there with me. So thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you. Baba Ye, the socialist. Are you a Maoist?
Yeah. I'm a revolutionary socialist.
Okay.
Well, first and foremost, let me say, unfortunately, I never had the pleasure of physically meeting BJ. I had the pleasure of correspondence and chats. And one of the things that, reflecting back now, I feel very bad about was there was something he put out after the 2023 election and also followed the Talakawa Liberation Korean Herald. For me, mentally, it was something of a continuation of Edwin Madunagu's Thursday columns. There was like an unbroken thread going forward mentally in that direction. But I mean, the article he did put out then on the obedient movement and the left, I did put together a draft to respond to him and Ogaga Ifowodo, but primarily to him. And I remember his response then was, I mean, bring it on. Unfortunately, I did abandon that pull between work and also practical things. And that's the issue of the left and division. But before that, there's something very significant which I think has not been said here with regards to him, and which to BJ, and which I saw from the eyes of Dr. Segun Oshoba. And that was, I mean, it's not just that Professor Jeyifo emerged as the ASU president. In 2015, when we were with Professor Dr. Segun Oshoba to mark his 80th birthday, he did say something very significant, and which was that they were all, I mean, the left caucus in Ife were not only shocked but quite pleased with is going to emerge as ASU president, because before then you had the teachers union was conservative, but Dr. Oshoba did point out how what they were against that he did, in short, broke against, you can say, organizational discipline ranks, in a sense, played a key role in building what became the lodestar of a left tradition in union building in Nigeria, which ASU is now. Total difference from what used to be National Association of University Teachers. Now, but with regards to the issue of the left infighting, Chido did say human nature to some extent, right? But also, Dr. Wale Okediran pointed out, you have it with writers. He also said politicians. I think that it's much more than just the left. It's also like when you have sometimes people who say, how will women emerge when they are fighting each other? Is that when the subaltern, those not in power, are having conflicts, it's the perspective in which it is looked at is different. But with the left, it is not even just so much the fight. It is more about, one, the content. A lot is different from what the quality of debates around that has sharply declined in recent decades. You know, two, the mutual respect between those that are engaged in such debate. Some of the hottest words that have been exchanged between people like, say, Escotoyo and Edwin Madunagu. But because in the first place, these are people that can hold their ground and they still have a sense of mutual respect. And the third thing is how ideological contestation is linked to or unhinged from practical political work. Most of those debates in earlier decades, and you had people that were carrying this out, being both intellectual and being involved in organization building. Now you have generalization, you have low level of intellectual engagement, and even those that are, pushing things out are not involved in political work on the ground. So you have a stratospheric ideological contestation, then you have the fight on the ground being something like your papa, your mama. I mean, not that they use those exact words, but that these are devoid of the kind of, they don't generate light, they generate heat. Because you can't, when you look at, and it's not just Nigeria, I mean, can you think of learning what is to be done outside the polemicizing with some people? Gramsci even put it in that, look, he finds it difficult to shadow box. You need, so when you are you and somebody you are boxing, you understand, he brings out the skills, not just about the boxing, but in terms of bringing out, ideas and what have you. So it is iron sharpeneth iron. And part of what we have now is that it is wood and wood that are more often than not eating each other. And when there's absence of something else, we feel it. And I'll show some up here. In 2005, Adams, I'm not exactly his fan, but he said something which did make sense at the NLC leadership conference. And SOZ Ejiofor also said something similar later. I said in 88, 89, when you had the Democrats and progressive contestation, they felt that that there's no need to be having ideological contestation because it was weakening the movement. But they now decided to bury the hatchet. But what happened was that other ideas, other alien ideas took the place of such more ideological ideas, things like ethnicity and all that kind of it. So there will always be contestation. It's what are the contents? How is that ideological contestation linked to practical political work on ground, and to what extent do you have mutual respect of those contending to see that, look, this is not supposed to necessarily to be a duel. I mean, it is more of fencing where that we're on the same side. So I think that these are the key issues. And tying it to BJ, he was someone that understood that fact that such contestation where they exist on the left are fencing and not mortal duels. And that is why the role he played as Solar Chair was crucial. And I think that we need to take this forward with regards to the left archives as a whole, in time where we are coming from to the recadarization for a new generation in the struggle for liberation. Thank you.
Thank you for that useful clarification. We are very grateful. And we are going to run a panel on the left in March or April, and you are going to participate. Olalekan Ajia. We take a few more. Olalekan Ajia.
Thank you very much, Prof. It's a great honor to be here to pay homage to Professor Biodun Jeyifo and to acknowledge the presence here of Professor Femi Ojudu, who, along with Professor Koli Omotosho, were my teachers in the Department of Theatre Arts at University of Ibadan in 1973-77. To give a context, I entered to read French at the University of Ibadan with theater arts and English as minor electives. Then went on year abroad in France and came back. And because of the influence of Femi Ojudu, Koli Omotosho, Biodun Jeyifo decided to do combined honors instead of single French BA. Why? The magnetism of these three, I would call musketeers, was such that you were drawn instinctively to spend most of your time in the Department of Theatre Arts. I said in a short tribute to BJ that I remember very clearly that these young men with Fidel Castro beards and cap and everything in their adre would go abroad on sabbatical or whatever and come back with suitcases of books for us, their students, at practically no cost. And this inspired us. I want you to look back at that period. Those of us then were teenagers just coming from HSC, imbued with a Say It Loud, I'm Black and Proud, James Brown, Jimmy Cliff, Many Rivers to Cross, Fela, and then here we meet these bright, first-class minds in the Department of Theatre Arts who were giving us all the lowdown on why we need to fight against military occupation of Nigeria. Again, context. This was the same period you had people like Olaoni, Omafumi Onoge, Bade Onimode, Aki Ojo,
Bala Usman in UI, in where we call it UI Zaria. Patrick Wilmot, Esco Otoyo, and so on. And these people were there, and we're getting close to them through the teachings of people like Biodun Jeyifo, Femi Oshofison, and Koli Omotosho. So what can I say other than to say that, like it has been said in so many words, apparently with the departure of BJ, Femi Oshofison, from active academic life and writing in the mass media, which now has metamorphosed into social media, the left has left us. And Nigeria is adrift. Oh, I'm borrowing that from Professor Toyin Falola, I believe. The left has left us. We're now adrift. We don't know where we're going in Nigeria, but it is great to know that there are people like Onumah and Professor Ogaga Ifowodo, and some of those they have left to carry on the struggle, like my friend Anikulapo. So I'm just wanting to say it is great to pay condolence to Biodun Jeyifo. I'm hoping that we try to revive the traditions that he left behind. And I want to signal that in 1976, we celebrated the 70th birthday of Professor Femi Oshofison, who is still here with us. I am hoping and praying that we will all be here to celebrate his 80th, June 2026, and that all the heroes past that are still on this platform, we will celebrate them before they pass on. My condolences to Professor Biodun Jeyifo's family, his children, his friends, and colleagues. Thank you very much, Professor.
Thank you very much. A.C. Sutherland Addy, you have to pardon me if I do not pronounce your name correctly. You have to forgive me. A.C., please go ahead. We may not be able to take everyone so that members of our panel can rest and have dinner. A.C.,
hello,
please, we can hear you.
Hear me?
Yes,
Thank you ever so much for setting up this platform. And I feel privileged to be among those who are here to honor Professor Jeyifo. I just want to speak very briefly since there isn't much time. I just want to speak to his ability to recognize and to project the work of others, in the in a Pan-African spirit. And in this wise, on behalf of myself and Professor Ann Adams, we put together a book called The Legacy of Ifo Sutherland, Pan-African Cultural Activism. And he and the great Olarotimi wrote these really remarkable essays that contribute to knowledge and knowledge production around our own people and project them. And so this, a true and great scholar is one who is able to do that. I also want to acknowledge that when the play The Marriage of Anansiwa was done on the 10th anniversary of the death of Ifo Sutherland, he and Olarotimi, he came over to Ghana, and he was actually participating in the production in the style of traditional African storytelling. So he just doesn't talk about it. He actually also is willing to demonstrate how it is done. So I join all of us in mourning the passing of such an individual, but his works and his mind live on. And those of us who are coming behind will be sure to try to project what he has done. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you. Let me thank the media who have joined us, because we have separate networks that will link together. Punch is here, Tribune is here, Vanguard is here, The Guardian is here. We are very grateful. They will report on this. I do not know what will be of interest to them, but they will begin to do the release from Tuesday or thereabout. Professor Adedoyin Aguro, professor at University of Ibadan, I think. Professor Aguro, and thanks SC for that contribution, because I didn't know that side of BJ. Professor Aguro, are you still there? While waiting for you, Professor Taiwo Oloruntoba Oju. Professor Taiwo Oloruntoba Oju from, I think, Akumba, I think. Yes, please. We'll take 3 or 4 more. Yes. Go ahead, sir. It's from your hand, not our hand. You have to unmute yourself.
All right. Yeah, thank you very much indeed. I just wanted to say 1 or 2 things. I was a student in the early 80s in Ilorin when Biodun Jeyifo came along with Osofison and Niyi Oshundari. They came to Ilorin occasionally that time. I was involved in drama, and that was one of the reasons that they came as well, because we were doing productions of Osofison in those days in Ilorin. So, and their presence, the 3 of them, was electrifying. The sheer presence was mobilizing, and eventually we came across their works, and particularly the theoretical works of Biodun Jeyifo. And it soon became the go-to volume. For example, his volume on Wale Okediran, he had several of them. It came to be the go-to volumes for our own then budding scholarship when we wanted to talk about radicalism in theater and so on and so forth. He's the one that has been referred to on Nigerian Yoruba traveling theater, then the Fruitful Lie, and so on and so forth. Those were volumes that really made an impact on us in those days. And of course, we were supposed to we followed up on those, and eventually became acolytes, of sort of acolytes of this trio, of Sofison, Jeyifo, and Oshundari in those days back then. I want to draw attention to the humanitarian side of Biodun Jeyifo, because, and I say this in particular because of the accusation that was levied regarding his attitude to non-left inclined students. And I think nothing could be more wrong, because I think Jeyifo managed to merge his radicalism with some kind of liberal accommodation of all manners of opinion. All manner of opinions would come in, and he would distill, as many people have said, he would distill everything clinically. And even when he did not agree with you, he would appreciate your point of view and just tell you those things that he thought were, and for example, he was able to clinically distinguish between the aesthetics of Soyinka and his ideology. And so I think it was really wrong for that kind of accusation to come. But one thing that I also wanted to draw attention to was the fact that when we had a problem in the University of Ilorin, he was one of those who took it upon themselves to come to Ilorin, because amongst the people whose appointments were terminated in those days were people who were left-inclined students and lecturers, acolytes of the radical orientation. And he was surprised to learn that some people, some lecturers who were left-inclined were on the other side of the divide. So he took it upon himself to come down to Ilorin at that time, for which we were really grateful, because we were looking for friends, people who were going to be very supportive of our cause at that time. I also want to draw attention finally to the fact that when recently, not long ago, about 2 or 3 years ago, he had this exchange with Ngugi wa Thiong'o on the language issue in African literature. And he said things like English was an African language or a Nigerian language. And there are many people who were not happy with the statement, and there was a lot of argument at that time. We had exchanges privately and sometimes publicly on this issue. I think it's an issue that will be revisited in time. But I think now that he has left us, aside the condolences, I think we should also attempt to revisit those areas of radicalism and philosophy that he left behind: the language question, the radical question, the question of Fabianism as against Trotskyism and Maoism and things like that, because he was really particular about Fabianism in those days. I think these elements should be picked up and distilled in his legacy. And I just want to join other people who have spoken to raise condolences for his family and those that he has left behind. Thank you very much.
Professor Shola Olorunyomi, University of Ibadan. Shola Olorunyomi. We'll try to accommodate a few more people. I have to be respectful of our panelists. They may be tired by now. Shola Olorunyomi. Okay, Professor Aguru, yes, please. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. I also want to join everyone who has appreciated Professor Toyin Falola for convening this meeting, and to condole with all of us who knew Professor Jeyifo in one way or the other. I'm going to make mine as brief as possible. And to first say that I had been reading Professor Jeyifo's works long before I met him. And I met him at that event that Dr. Wale Okediran spoke about, where he was keynote speaker at the 20 years of the Nobel Prize in Africa. I was also privileged to speak with him at that conference. The most important thing that I think I have to contribute is to talk about his book, which Professor Adekoya has also spoken about. I happen to work on the opera of Nigeria and Japan. And in so doing, I had to rely extensively on the work he had done on the Yoruba traveling theatre. And I think that even now, as this event has been on, I've tried to go online to find the book online. And there's even though I still have the photocopy that I worked on, there is very little or no presence of that very important book. And I heard Prof. Falola say earlier today that what would outlive, would it be his theoretical works, his radicalism, or his books? I want to say that for some of us, his books. I also am a Soyinka scholar, and I also read his work on Soyinka. And I want to also draw attention to the prefaces of those two books, which gives an insight into the person of BJ. I I don't know how we're going to do this, but I think that should be a celebration that should continue long after his interment. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor, University of Ibadan. We're very grateful. Olayinka Agbetui, a literary scholar, calling from London. You are still there? Olayinka Agbetui, are you still there? Temitope Fagunwa from Germany, I think. Temitope Fagunwa, are you still there? Please proceed. We'll take two more. Please proceed. Can you unmute yourself, please? Omokeko Olufela. Omokeko Olufela, are you there? Fagwa is protesting that we didn't unmute him. We normally are very careful in unmuting people because of Zoom bombers. We've mastered the act of preventing that. Temitope Fagwa, yes?
Yes, Prof. Can I be heard?
Yes, please talk.
Firstly, we have to thank Professor Toyin Falola again for this gathering. My intervention is a quick one. Secondly, it is important to extend my heartfelt condolences to the family of our dear comrade professor. I am an historian by background, and I think I'm attracted to late Prof's work on Marxism, on the question of Marxism, and also on a book he authored on Africa and the wider world. I would always go back to that particular book, when I have to make references to post-colonial African troubles, and then not just within the African continent, but beyond the African continent. I would like to intervene on particularly on the question that was raised, that it appears that the left movement or the leftists have actually left the scene, the political scene in the country. And I think the question was raised earlier on about the challenges of the left movement, and I would say that I totally agree with the perspective that Baba Aye brought into the discourse. However, I would like to add also that part of the challenge that seems to be extremely important right now, that confronts us in a neo-colonial Nigerian state and beyond the Nigerian state across the African continent, is also that we are living at a time where indeed neoliberal globalization seems to have dominated the entirety of our sphere. And that also includes our so-called citadels of learning. Unfortunately, we are living at a time where our universities, unfortunately, have been hijacked, by these neoliberal tendencies, and we cannot assess how the effect of this hijack, without not also pointing to how the student movement seems to have been watered down today. The student movement apparently have been emasculated as a result of the dominance of this neoliberal globalization, this neoliberal tendency. And it is also important to connect this, because the question is being raised. The left have left, and what is to be done? The Nigerian state is currently vulnerable, where we all have an ultimate duty to get involved in this discourse. For an instance, today, unfortunately, the management across our universities seems to be the gatekeepers of these neoliberal tendencies. More so why across our universities, including the Babafemi Ojudu University, you have management working their fingers to the bones right now to emasculate student movement. And if we assess, the role of the Nigerian student movement in the, in the political discourse of, post-colonial Nigeria. You cannot but make mention of the fact that in the 70s, in the 80s, where we had, radicalized student movements. Indeed, the narrative, despite the fact that you had the military in existence, the narrative was different from what it is today. So it is important for us to begin to see ourselves in this discourse, not to see the left, those opposing the left as the ultimate savior.
Thank you, Dr. Fagua. Thank
Prof,
you.
let me just end by saying that it is important for us to begin to challenge ourselves, that we have our own, roles, distinctive roles to play, in ensuring that what the legacies, the works that the likes of Professor BJ left must be ignited, must be reignited, must be institutionalized across our sphere. Thank you very much.
And he was actually 34 years old when he inherited ASU and led it. He wasn't an old man because we were all together. Olayinka Agbetui, are you there? I don't want to slight you, but if you're having challenges, you can send your note and I will circulate it. Omokeko Olufela, and finally Jan. Jan, I can't pronounce your name because that's not a full name. Jan, please. Jan. I don't want to slight anyone because you are honoring a great person. Omokeko Olufela, please talk. Please unmute him. Because some of you know him, I have to be very careful not to slight you. Olufela, can you unmute yourself? Whoever is the first to do so, Agbetui, Professor of Literature, Jan, all of you are having internet issues. Okay. I'm afraid, Professor Da Silva. Professor Da Silva was Jeyifo's student. Professor Da Silva, please talk. These internet issues. Professor Da Silva, BJ taught you at Ife, that I know when you came from Nsukka. Please go ahead. Please talk. Tokumbo Ayola, Professor of History.
Okay.
Baba Godwin Sogolo, my panelists are tired. You're creating problems for me now.
Very much.
Professor Da Silva, yes.
Yes, thank you very much, sir. I want to quickly join others to commend the efforts of Professor Toyin Falola for putting this forum together. It's an opportunity for every one of us to be able to say one or two things about eminent Professor Biodun Jeyifo. Well, Biodun Jeyifo taught me at UNIFE in those days, together with Oshofison was, even at IFE then, he was on sabbatical leave. And we also have Rokpo Shekone, who came from Ilorin to join us at IFE. And of course, we have Professor Akinyuba and a host of other, Kole Omotosho. They were all there. Biodun Jeyifo was in the Department of Literature in English then. We enjoyed the fire, that these people represent, particularly with regards to Marxism, unapologetically. And of course, we also have the younger ones who were, again, mentoring some of us. We have Gigi Dara then and Chidi Amota. They were, very young lecturers then. What I want to say, particularly with regards to Professor Jeyifo, is not only on him, but Ngugi wa Thiong'o, Ajayi-Soyinka, and a host of others then. About that same time, they were sucked in by the American system. When that is after the global north had ensured that the countries in the global south, particularly Nigeria, had been put where they want it to be. And that is the reason why the whole place became so unbearable and they were sucked in. The curious thing about the whole matter is this contradiction that I found, even with them, that crop. And that has to do with the fact that in all their theorization, in everything that they taught us then, we never believed that any of them will be attracted to end up in the US as a capitalist country. And that contradiction actually, for me, was something that I could hardly manage. I didn't know that they will end up there because the moment they got there, the fire simmered. Of course, they still continued in that tradition, but it was not as it used to be when they were in Africa. Ngugi and a host of others, including Jeyifo. And so when Professor Falola mentioned the fact that the left left us, I was trying to look at it from that perspective that, yeah, the left actually left us. Some of us got stranded.
Professor Da Silva, is it not, can we not attribute this to the policies of the Bretton Woods institutions that devastated Africa in the 80s? I know when all these people left. I left in 89 myself. And I went to talk to my supervisor. I was very angry. So where are you going? And it was Malam Femi Taiwo who wrote my retirement letter, a very trenchant retirement resignation letter. So when people have, I think it's a legitimate criticism in which students will say, well, but they've been leading us towards Marxism, expecting a different society, and these are these people now who left us. And I've come across people who see it as a betrayal. Ogaga, what are you going to say to that? Thank you for bringing this up, Professor Da Silva. Ogaga, how will you address this? Because we have to face it squarely.
I think knowledge has no boundaries. And if you are a humanist, I think you can work for liberation wherever you are. I don't think that, well, I mean, the history is full of radicals who, in fact, in order to continue their work, had to leave home. To remain at home will mean death, will mean needless self-martyrdom, a heroism that will serve no purpose. I don't think anybody can reasonably say that.
But you went back. You are my colleague here, but you went back.
Yeah, but we must look at each case. I mean, earlier we said, I pointed out how DJ moved from what was, by his own account, his Jacobinist years. In other words, a less attentive way of looking at society and its complexities, and moved towards complexity and found a new way of interpreting Soyinka. We must also understand that human society is very complex, and especially in this day and age, so intertwined that the idea that you have to be at home alone, not be productive, will sound too nativist and actually reductionist in my view. The question will be, when they were abroad, how engaged were they? what were the struggles of the time that they could not participate in effectively? Even if the struggle for democracy,
I think the way Professor Da Silva is challenging the argument is, as students, they were being motivated to fight for the nation's progress and development. And then they suddenly felt abandoned.
I'm saying there's no contradiction.
Professor Ajayi-Soyinka wants to respond to that. Because this is a big challenge that we can't just sweep under the carpet.
I think he has to understand. I think he has to subject that sense of abandonment to further scrutiny to know whether it was take the case of BJ. He was going to do a book for which the university was not even going to pay. All he needed was a leave of absence to do that book. If, as a scholar whose primary engagement is intellectual production, here has the support to do that work, and his home university will not give him the leave of absence to do it. Will it be productive for him to stay there, stultify his academic career, his knowledge production activity, just because of what? Because he's paying allegiance to home? But since he left, can we say that Nigeria lost more in BJ going to the US, or that we gained more? Can we say that the world of knowledge gained more when left for the US or lost? That is the way in which I think we should look at this. Rather than just say, if you leave home, then you've abandoned home. Because in this day and age, you can be effective
Professor
wherever you are.
Ajayi-Soyinka wants to say something. She's gesturing.
Yeah. I think, yes, Professor Da Silva raised a very critical question. But there is no straight answer. It's, the complexity. We've talked of humanism. We're human beings. Leftists are also human beings. And when the condition is unproductive, I used the term, I said decolonial dystopia. That's what we are all facing. So when you are working and you are on a trajectory and there's a heavy block on the road, you run into that, you ram your head into that blockade, or you try and create another path. And it is what you do when you get to the other path. Because I have questioned myself, BJ and I have talked, over this. What are we doing here outside our country, outside where we are needed most? But the other side that we look at is, are we contributing anything to the production of knowledge, as Dr. Ogaga had said? And we know that we take consolation in the fact that we're here. Yes, we came to the West. I didn't want to come to America. I wanted to go to Botswana. But like I said, we are leftists. I'm not a leftist per se, are also human beings. So finding myself in the US, I take solace in the fact that there is this element of free speech, ability to explore, to develop along your trajectory. Yes, things are now different in 2025. So the essence, we take consolation in the fact that we have created a niche here from which all Americans and others who find themselves here drink from.
Let me challenge you a little bit. Okay. Last Thursday, the state of Texas passed a bill. You cannot teach controversial topics. That's the law now. That's the law.
That's why I said we've had some changes.
Yes.
In recent times.
My entire epistemologies are controversial. So you ask me not to teach race, not to teach domination, not to teach dependency, not to teach exploitation. What you're asking me to do is you're just here for your food. And second, I hope you are aware that 2 weeks ago, they abolished on my campus the Department of African Studies and African American Studies. It's gone. They merged it with another department. They actually merged 7 departments. So what they now did in this merger, they created what they now call a Department of Social and Cultural Analysis. And they said, it's at the very top, that they are going to define the curriculum. The challenge I'm offering is, when we face this kind of situation, in the 80s we faced survivor challenges. Now we're here, we're now facing, they're now asking us to commit epistemic suicide. So I don't have an answer.
It behoves us to find, to
may I-
devise another means of resistance.
Yes.
So we are constantly re-evaluating, re-examining the situation and developing new strategies of resistance.
Okay.
Yeah, Prof, even the history of how African American studies came to be. Don't forget the sit-ins, the struggles of the 60s, before they could even be taught. Now there's reaction, trying to, we understand where that is coming from. So it means new struggles are there to be waged. But let's not forget, Karl Marx did a great deal of his work in the belly of the colonial whale in England, not in Germany. I think it is not the right kind of fixation to think that if you are not in a physical location at home where you were born, your patch of earth where you were born, therefore you have abandoned it, you have left it. I don't think it is within the framework of knowledge production. I don't think it's exactly very correct. That's what I'm saying. We
you
have
could
to
see the testimonies, different people talking about BJ coming to give keynote addresses, not charging them any money, donating all his entire library. We also have to find a way of evaluating it. The day that Professor Ajayi-Soyinka donated a library to Ife, I joined the ceremony. So I think something is also going back. So that we need a procedure of evaluation.
Yes.
In terms of how we have to address this. Professor Sugulu turns 80 a few days ago. I can't stop an 80-year-old man from talking. You understand? I think I will get into trouble. Please, Professor, please. You look so young. You don't look like an 80-year-old person.
Thank you very much, Prof. I am. That's the truth. But that's the thing that that's the thing I have in common with Biodun Jeyifo. I was born on January 4th, 1946. Biodun Jeyifo was born on January 5th, 1946. So just a year, my junior. And although we were not in the same discipline, I was not in the literary areas, literature and English, and I was in philosophy. I am in philosophy. But there's a lot that pulled us together. One, the radical left ideology that is being spoken by his colleagues in the literary fields was differently conceived by us. For us, Biodun Jeyifo, for us in philosophy, Biodun Jeyifo was fighting an ethical problem. He loved the common man. He spoke for the oppressed. And he talked about, if you look closely at his works, you see that he was always fighting a common cause. But it's nice that all this is being pulled into a left ideology, but I'm saying that it was slightly different. It's a pity that we have not been together for the fact that it was away for most of the time. But for the years that we were together, both at Ife and then in Ibadan, we were really friends. In fact, we considered ourselves as brothers. And it's a pity that you had to go that early. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
And let me wish you happy birthday. I greeted you on WhatsApp and I call you. And
you did. Thank you.
We'll celebrate you at 90.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
At 100. When you are 101, you are on your own. I will not attend this.
I'll be all right if I get to 90. Thank you very much.
Thank you very
Prof.
much. We've called those three people there. If your internet is working, please say something. Who Agbetui, please, can you say something quick?
Okay, Prof. For me, I'm a master's student at the University of Melbourne, and
Australia.
Yes, sir. And Prof, it's a great privilege to share this platform with you. I have read a lot of your works, and I think I have become so obsessed with In Praise of Greatness, followed by A Mouth Sweeter Than Salt. So it's a great privilege for me to be heard by your esteemed self. And
what are you doing in Australia?
Almost everyone that has said one or two things, they have come in contact with the late Professor Biodun Jeyifo in person. For me, as a young student, I have only come in contact with the physicality of his mind, which by that I mean his books. So, and the book that has actually really drawn me to Biodun Jeyifo is the one titled Things Fall Apart, Things Fall Together. And I actually love the unpacking of Achebe's Things Fall Apart, as in the sense that things didn't really fall apart for everyone in Things Fall Apart. By building, saying that for those who accepted the new religion, for those who found economic prosperity with the coming of the whites, things didn't really fall apart for them. So for that alone was for me was the most intriguing thing about Things Fall Apart that I have read. And I joined this session purposely to hear more and learn more. And I am happy to say that I have learned a lot from this session. And thank you, Prof, for this platform. And I look forward to learning more and more. And lastly, I would want to, presently, I am working on a manuscript, a collection of poetry. And for my obsession with your works, Prof. Toyin Falola, I am throwing a plea, an open plea, that I would love to send the manuscript over to you to have a look at it, because
please, thank you. Send it by email. Please send it by email. Well, can you please give your closing statement? It's optional. If you don't want to give a closing statement, that's fine. If you want to give one, and then I will do my votes of thanks. Professor Okediran, any closing statement?
Yes, sir. Thank you. It's been a wonderful evening, and like I said, it's a pleasure to be here and to thank you for putting this together. And the Pan-African Writers Association will be represented at the burial ceremony in Ibadan, Nigeria, next week. And we are going to honor BJ with a publication whereby we invite writers from all over the world to send in poems, short articles, and co, just like we did for Jerry Rollins and Professor Soyinka during his 90th birthday, because we believe that we need to document some of these things before we all forget. Thank you, and God bless you all.
Thank you. There is a request, Professor Ajayi-Soyinka, for that paper on BG and Spivak, because people are sending me messages as we are talking. If you still have it, we will circulate it. Any closing statement?
Yeah, it's been very helpful to be here, to listen to others, my fellow panelists, and also the exciting contributions from the floor, from the audience. Thank you very much for making this possible. For everybody, what you have said, you have expanded my knowledge of BJ, even though I say I've known him for a long time, but you've expanded my knowledge of him, and I have utter respect for him and for his legacy. He was not a perfect human being. Nobody is perfect.
Correct.
But he did well. Thank you.
Well, the University of Ibadan is inviting all of us to an exhibition they're mounting in honor of Biodun Jeyifo at the Institute of African Studies. Thank you for doing that. There will be many more celebrations.
Date?
They said they've just started the exhibition. Usually it will be about his essays and books. Chido Ogaga. Sorry,
you.
Chido Onumah. The African man.
Thank you so much, Prof, for this evening. I think Comrade BJ lives. He lives in his works, in his humanism, in his activism. He lives for so many reasons. He touched so many lives, just as Dr. Okediran mentioned. The Socialist Library and Archives will be in Ibadan early next month to join comrades, friends, students, and well-wishers to bid Comrade BJ by and also celebrate him for his legacy. I think there'll be many more, as you mentioned, many more tributes, books, and other things. But it's always wonderful to have platforms like this, particularly the kind of things that the Soyinka Center did for him on his 80th birthday, so that we celebrate great people, men and women, not just when they die, but when they're alive, to appreciate their own contribution to humanity. So thank you so much, Prof.
Thank you. I'm Professor Tunde Adeniran, former Federal Minister of Education. He joined us. I think he joined us very late. Thanks for coming. We appreciate your commitment and dedication. We cannot call everyone. Ogaga, do you want to close?
Well, just quickly, just to say, BJ was a consummate, penetrating reader and interpreter of literary texts, even very difficult ones. In one of his Talakawa Liberation Courier columns, he actually expounded on the contemporary state of the haiku and actually wrote some himself. So as a parting word, I close my essay, my tribute, the communist as teacher, the example of Biodun Jeyifo, with 3 haikus which are dedicated to him. So if it's okay, I will just read 2 of them. Haikus are very short, so it will be less than a minute. So the first one I'll call Town Hall or Classroom. The world, parted by forked tongues, melts with a word in autumn. And in tribute to his dedication to the class struggle and the oppressor, oppressed, dominated, and the one dominating, the second one, man steals goat, bags 3 years. Man steals bank, commander of the republic. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Professor Kofi Anyidoho, with apologies. His daughter, a professor, sent me a note that I just received saying that I should resend the Zoom link, but we no longer have the time. I thank all of you sincerely. So what happens next? 2 minutes. After we close, the entire transcript will be released to the public within 2 minutes. As we close, we'll play some music. If you like the music, we can send you the music selection for this program so that because we cannot upload it on YouTube, but we can send you the music selection we choose for this event. And I will write my reflections in 2 pieces on what you have said. Thank you. Our next program will be on March 8, talking about Nigerian insecurity. And Chido Onumah put together the panel for us. I'm very grateful to all of you for accepting to come. We've honored him. When it's time for us and we get older, may other people also honor us. Thank you very much. Enjoy the music. Thank you.